So hey guys, and welcome to the Random Watch Do channel. Thanks for joining me for another video, and today is a review about a new watch which I've just bought. I've just bought a new vintage watch. Now this isn't it. This watch that you're looking at here is a neo vintage TAG Heuer 1000. I bought this watch. I must have had it about 4 or 5 months now. I bought it just before Christmas 2023. Lovely watch, and I thought I'd show you this watch quickly because today is the day that TAG Heuer, that brand that I really like, TAG Heuer have just re-released a watch very, very similar to this actually, the F1. This is actually probably a slightly larger version of the F1 with a little bit more refinement in that it's got a nicer bezel, a nicer steel bezel. This one, of course, is a two-tone bezel, but the F1, the original F1, had a kind of a plasticky type of bezel. And of course, TAG Heuer have just re-released that watch, a quartz watch. And look, I will probably talk about that at some point in another video. I'm not crazy about it. I love what TAG Heuer have just done. By the way, I love the fact that they've just decided to re-release that lovely 35mm F1. Really great idea. The execution I'm not so sure about in terms of the way they've gone about it, but I do have some other thoughts on that as well, which I'll share in another video. So this is actually the watch I've been wearing today, but the watch I wanted to show you for a review is this bad boy. So this is, guys, a watch that I am very, very happy with. This is a King Seiko. Reference is 5626-7030. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see, I'll just try and get a bit closer there, some of the text on the dial there. So it's referred to as a superior chronometer. And that obviously Seiko, being a Japanese business, they don't have the superlative chronometer. They don't actually regulate or didn't regulate their watches to COSC standards back in the day. They used to regulate them to their own Japanese standards, and they refer to that as a superior chronometer. And as you can see also here in the bottom line of text, King Seiko KS, and this is a high beat model. So yes, this bad boy is a high beat, which is 10 beats rather than 8 beats per second for the standard. Now guys, I'm not going to do a really thorough review of this, but I wanted to show you this watch, and I wanted to kind of just briefly give you an overview of what I absolutely adore about this watch. And the first thing I want to show you, just as excitingly as the front, is the bag. So I love the case back. Now you guys know I love a good solid case back. Now let me just try and get this in focus. Here we go. So look at that case back, guys. Isn't that gorgeous? We've got a King Seiko applied medallion, as they call it, in the center there. And that is the original medallion. A lot of these older King Seikos and Grand Seikos, they put a medallion on the case backs. But what I've found through having bought a few of these over the years is quite often these medallions used to fall out or just rot out, and they'd be replaced by a new one. Now I can tell that this is still the original because I can see very, very faint traces of patina, particularly in the lettering there. And also another sign that you've got an original medallion on your King Seiko, vintage King Seiko or vintage Grand Seiko, is that the medallion, if this watch has been worn a lot and it's got the original medallion, is the medallion just tends to sort of wear a little bit. It tends to sort of soften. That textured finish that you can see on it tends to just wear down a little bit when the watch has actually been worn for many years, and this one's showing signs of that too. So this watch, I can tell you guys that this watch was cased in July 1969. So this watch was cased in the same month and year that Apollo 11 went up and orbited around the moon, and man first set foot on the moon. This watch was cased at the very same time, and I can tell that because if you look at the serial numbers down here, it starts with a 9. And I can tell you that signifies 1969, and the next number 7 signifies the month, which is July. So those two numbers in that serial number. The other 4 numbers, by the way, the 2190, that's just the generic kind of sequential numbering. But the 9 and the 7 denote the year and the month that the watch was cased. And that's a very, very reliable way that you can check how old your Seiko is. And it goes, they still do that today. They still have a sequential serial reference, very much in the same format. So yep, 1969, guys. I mean, this watch is older than me. You know, this watch is ancient. It's 55 years old nearly. It's crazy, isn't it? And look at the condition. So I just wanted to show you a few reasons why I bought this particular watch. So one reason I bought this particular watch is the case size. This is a 38.5mm case size, guys. This is big, you know, for a vintage watch, for a 55-year-old dress watch. This is big. And just to give you an idea, I'm going to put this up against the tag. So I'll just show you what this looks like up against the tag. There you go. So it's holding its own against this tag. Now this tag has I think it's a 37mm case. So this King Seiko dress watch is still slightly larger, as you can see, than the tag. What I'll also do, guys, is I'll just compare the size of this to my Rolex Datejust 36. So very, very modern watch, 36mm classic size. And as you can see, again, put them side by side and get them as much in line as I can. Yeah, the King Seiko is still bigger, isn't it? The dial's bigger, very slightly, and of course the width of the case is just giving you that feeling of size. The actual bracelet itself, that's a different story. The bracelet on the Rolex is significantly more substantial, but the case size itself is a very impressive and very unusual for its day, 38.5mm. So that gives this watch a bit of heft, and it also means that it's enabled this particular model, because this is not the same of all King Seikos and Grand Seikos of the day, but this particular model can hold its own on the wrist, and I will put it on my wrist in a minute. But before that, I just wanted to show you also the bracelet. So this bracelet is 55 years old, guys. It's very unusual to get a watch of this age, and I'm sure you guys all know this, that's still got its bracelet, for one, still actually got a bracelet at all, because of course what happens is the links tend to just get really, really stretched, and eventually the whole thing just breaks, and people just used to throw the bracelet away. I think once they got a bit old and a bit tatty, they throw it away and put it on a leather strap. And so this watch has still got its original bracelet. It still fits. I've got all the links. It still fits my wrist. I've got obviously the lovely original clasp here with the KS initials emblazoned on the clasp there. And as you can see, it hasn't been overly polished. So I've still got a nice amount of, I guess, what you could call scratches and scuffs and marks, you know, which is obviously signs of the fact that it's been worn and it's had a good life, you know. So this is a nice bracelet, guys. It's just, you know, a lovely solid click to it as well. I do like a good click on a bracelet. I think we all do. So I received this watch from Japan. You guys know I like to buy a lot of watches from Japan. I went for this particular one mainly because bracelet, very unusual, had enough bracelet to actually fit my wrist. And this particular model is not easy to get. This was actually one of the more expensive models of the day. I've actually downloaded the original King Seiko catalogue from 1969, which shows this watch in it. This watch at the time, I think, was 32,000 yen when it was brand new in 1969, and would probably cost you about 10-15 times more than that now, of course, if you were to buy it. But it was 32,000 yen, which I think I converted that to 350 New Zealand dollars, which is about less than 200 quid. You know, in British money. So yeah, look, it was obviously a cheap watch, probably quite expensive at the time in 1969. So yeah, look, as you can see, guys, on my wrist here, it holds its own really nicely. I've got just over a 7-inch wrist, and I think it's holding its own very, very nicely. It's a 19mm lug width, and it tapers down to 16 at the clasp. So really love what I've got here. This in terms of cost, guys, this cost me, landed in New Zealand from Japan, this cost me just over 900 New Zealand dollars, which is about £450, which is, what's that in US dollars? Probably around, I don't know, 500 US. So, you know, not an insignificant amount of money for a 55-year-old watch, but I'm very, very happy. You can buy these watches without the bracelet for cheaper. You can buy these watches in not such good condition. One of the other things that I really liked when I bought this watch, the reason I chose to buy it, is because although obviously you can see the glass has picked up a few scratches and knocks, and which tells me it is the original glass, which is another nice feature. I like the fact that the dial hasn't got any stains on it. It hasn't got any patina. It hasn't got any stains. This watch has been really well looked after. And as you can see, of course, it's a day date, so very functional. It's got a nice crown there, nice KS logo on the crown, original crown. So all in all, guys, I'm really happy with this. I'm very, very happy. And, you know, if you want to sort of dig into the details of King Seiko, because, of course, Seiko re-released the King Seiko range just a couple of years ago with some models that I'm not too keen on myself, but I kind of like the fact that Seiko re-released or you know, sort of re-released the King Seiko brand, if you like, because I do like the brand. I think it's great. The King Seiko brand actually ran in parallel back in the late 60s and early 70s. It ran in parallel with Grand Seiko. Now, very, very brief history lesson. King Seiko and Grand Seiko were both obviously owned by the Seiko Corporation, but they wanted them to compete with each other. They actually wanted King Seiko and Grand Seiko to be in competition. So King Seikos were made at one factory in Japan and Grand Seikos were made at the other factory in Japan, and they competed with each other for many years to see who could make the best watch. And of course, Grand Seiko ultimately won that competition, and King Seiko, I think they stopped making models under that brand in the mid-1970s. So King Seiko's ran for 6 or 7 years. And this is one of the earlier models. As you can see, it says waterproof on the back of the dial there. Whereas I think by the time they got to about 1970, they weren't allowed to call watches waterproof anymore. They had to call them water resistant. And that was due to a change of law, I think, in the statements or the promises they made about water resistance. So yeah, look, guys, there's a lot of history in this watch. I have not taken it off of my wrist apart from this morning because I put the tag on. I put the tag on this morning just to celebrate the re-release of the F1. But this watch has been on my wrist for several days now. It's currently running at about plus 6 seconds per day. I'm very happy with that. For a vintage watch, that's significantly better than a modern Seiko watch, isn't it, guys? You know, which I think Seiko these days will guarantee you, potentially if you bought a 6R35 movement watch and you spent maybe $1,000 on it, you'd be lucky to get that accurate within about 10 to 12 seconds a day. And I think a lot of them are running at 15 to 20 seconds a day, whereas this one's running at plus 6. And it's 55 years old and cost me, you know, a third of the price of a modern Seiko. So yeah, figure that one out, guys. Yeah, beautiful. Really, really happy with this. I probably will make another video later on. But for now, guys, this is just a brief intro to this absolutely gorgeous vintage King Seiko 56267030. Thanks for watching the video, guys, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers.